You're not failing at your relationships just because you're apologizing a lot. Here's the real reason. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, your brain gets rewired to believe everything is your fault.
I just really needed to say that, I'm sorry.
So, saying sorry becomes a survival tool you picked up to stay safe. Today, let's break down the 10 ways how narcissistic abuse victims over-apologize in relationships. Are you ready for number 1? Backpedaling during disagreements. Have you ever experienced saying sorry just to end an argument, even when you know you're not wrong?
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking.
Narcissistic abuse. Victims often find themselves backpedaling during disagreements, apologizing in the middle of a heated conversation just to avoid further conflict. As therapist and author Shannon Thomas explains in her book, Healing from Hidden Abuse, this behavior is a form of trauma response. Narcissists can make you feel like every disagreement could lead to emotional or physical abandonment. So, you end up trying to smooth things over quickly, even if it means sacrificing your truth. Over time, it leaves you feeling like you're always at fault, even when you're not, and can make it hard to trust your own feelings and judgment. Let's talk about number 2, over-apologizing in texts. Narcissistic abuse. Victims over-apologize in texts to avoid triggering the narcissist's anger or disapproval. As psychologist and author Dr. Lindsay C. Gibson explains in her book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, the fear of being ignored or criticized can make you second-guess your every word. Narcissistic abuse makes you anxious when someone doesn't reply right away, because past ghosting or punishment taught you to overthink everything you say. It's a reflex, constantly apologizing to prevent a reaction that might make you feel invalidated or abandoned. Even a harmless K or a delayed response can send you spiraling into panic mode, wondering what you did wrong. You start editing and re-editing your messages just to sound safe or less offensive. And when there's silence, you fill the gap with guilt, assuming you messed up even when you didn't. Let's move on to number 3, apologizing for needing reassurance. Victims of narcissistic abuse often feel guilty for needing emotional clarity, as if their desire for security is an inconvenience. This pattern of over-apologizing for seeking reassurance can become ingrained, especially after being gaslit or manipulated, where their worth was constantly questioned. Dr. Laura Berman, a renowned therapist, explains that when you're constantly told that your feelings aren't valid, asking for reassurance can feel like a shameful act. It becomes a cycle. You're not just seeking comfort, but also trying to avoid being criticized or belittled for expressing vulnerability. The guilt around needing reassurance can leave you feeling isolated, even though your need for validation is completely natural. Now, let's continue to number 4, apologizing for having boundaries around intimacy. Asserting boundaries, especially around intimacy, can feel like an impossible task for narcissistic abuse victims. Apologizing for not being ready or for needing space is often a way of trying to protect the relationship from blowing up, even if it means sacrificing your own comfort. As Dr. Susan Forward, author of Toxic Parents, explains, narcissistic partners often manipulate and guilt-trip their victims, making them believe that setting boundaries, especially around intimacy, equates to rejecting the other person. This fear of being abandoned or unloved leads to an ongoing cycle of over-apologizing for simply protecting your own emotional and physical well-being. You feel like if you assert control over your body or emotional access, it'll be seen as a personal attack, even when it's just about self-care. You shouldn't miss number 5, saying sorry for crying. As a narcissistic abuse victim, tears become something to apologize for because you've been conditioned to believe that expressing emotion is a weakness or inconvenience. When the tears start flowing, you quickly follow up with, "Sorry, I didn't mean to cry," trying to downplay your vulnerability. This reflex usually comes from a history of being shamed, mocked, or ignored for showing any emotional need. The constant apologizing for showing emotion not only diminishes the value of one's feelings, but also reinforces the idea that it's better to hide or suppress them to avoid rejection. This creates an unhealthy cycle where you feel you must apologize for feeling, which ultimately makes it even harder to express yourself authentically in the future. Are you still up for number 6? Apologizing for having a different opinion. If you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, you might find yourself apologizing for simply disagreeing or expressing a different perspective. This behavior often comes from past experiences where your opinions were twisted or used against you. The narcissist made you feel like having a unique perspective would lead to conflict or rejection. As psychologist Dr. Alexandra Solomon explains in her book, Loving Bravely, narcissists often make their victims feel like their thoughts and feelings are invalid or even dangerous to the relationship. So, victims start apologizing before the other person can criticize or dismiss them. This constant apologizing for thinking differently can erode your self-confidence and make you doubt your own ability to voice your thoughts freely. Let's keep it moving to number 7, apologizing after standing up for themselves. After finally finding the courage to stand up for yourself, you often end up apologizing right after, saying things like, "Sorry if that sounded harsh." According to Dr. Sherry Campbell, author of But It's Your Family, the voice of a narcissist often lingers in the victim's head long after the relationship ends, making them second-guess their every move and apologize for setting boundaries. This constant self-doubt and guilt can make it feel impossible to assert yourself without immediately feeling like you're doing something wrong. It's a painful cycle where speaking your truth feels like an offense, and the apology comes as a way to fix the imagined wrong, even when you've done nothing but assert your right to be heard. Here comes number 8, apologizing when they're not in a good mood. When you're not in the best place emotionally, you might catch yourself apologizing for having a bad mood. According to Dr. Robin Stern, a psychologist and author of The Gaslight Effect, narcissistic abuse often creates an environment where victims feel they must constantly perform and be pleasing to the narcissist, especially emotionally. If you show vulnerability or express being upset, it's seen as a disruption to their world, so you apologize for it. even though everyone has days when they're just not feeling it. This over-apologizing stems from the constant pressure to be perfect, and over time, it can lead to self-judgment and guilt for simply experiencing natural human emotions. Moving on to number 9, apologizing for expressing joy or excitement. As a narcissistic abuse victim, you were trained to believe that your happiness only matters if it serves the narcissist's needs or interests. Therapist Carol McBride explains in her book, Will I Ever Be Free of You? That narcissistic abuse can make you feel like your emotions, especially the good ones, are a burden. This means when you express joy or excitement, you're conditioned to think it will annoy or alienate the narcissist. So you apologize preemptively, even when there's no need. Over time, this behavior can stifle your ability to enjoy life freely, as you become more self-conscious about your own happiness. Finally, we're down to number 10, apologizing for needing alone time. Narcissists often label any form of independence as abandonment or selfishness, making you feel guilty for wanting to recharge alone. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, a psychologist and author of Should I Stay or Should I Go?, explains that narcissistic partners frequently demand constant attention and emotional labor, leaving their victims feeling like their need for space is a personal offense. Over time, you may start saying sorry just for needing space because you've been taught that caring for yourself means neglecting the relationship. You start feeling like you're walking on eggshells, afraid to upset your partner, even when you're just trying to maintain your own well-being. So if you've been wondering why "I'm sorry" keeps slipping out of your mouth like it's on autopilot, now you know you were trained to believe that keeping the peace meant taking the blame. But here's the good news. You don't have to live like that forever. Learn to pause before you apologize. Ask yourself if you truly did something wrong, and give yourself permission to just be. That's how healing begins.